Welcome back to the show. Well, it's been a long, tense and bitter election campaign, and now voting is almost over in the US election. In just a few hours, we will know if Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States.
For some more analysis, let's go live now to Washington, D.C. and Professor Jane Hall. Professor Jane Hall, thank you for your time. Not long to go now. Gee, it's been an interesting campaign, hasn't it? How are you looking at this now in the final moments? Would you be willing to place a bet on perhaps who will be the next president?
Well, you know, I think the Hillary Clinton people are feeling better. Trump has a narrow path to victory. One thing to watch for, one of the early results we're going to get is out of Florida. There's been a huge uptick in Hispanic early voting. Latinos may deliver a lot of votes across the country for Hillary Clinton. That'll be a state to watch. It closes early. North Carolina is hanging in the balance. He needs to win that one. He's hopeful about Michigan because of the blue-collar workers. He has a path, but he would have to flip a state that has traditionally gone Democratic as well as win a lot of the states that are toss-ups now. The other thing that's very interesting to watch, a state like New Hampshire doesn't have that many votes, but it is a state that is highly contested, wasn't expected to be. I mean, he is going to do well, but most of the predictions are that she has probably close to a 70% chance of winning the election now. Again, these are polls, they are not votes, but I think the Clinton people are feeling more optimistic. If she does 5%, that will be better than if she wins by 5%, which would be a pretty significant and decisive victory. That will mean a lot more than if she wins by 3%. But 3% is what Obama beat Mitt Romney by in 2012. So there's a lot hanging in the balance, as you know. The Senate may flip control over to the Democrats. There's a lot of highly fought races all over the country, a lot of different coalitions. One thing that's so interesting is that Hillary Clinton is beating Donald Trump by about 25 percentage points among college-educated women. He's winning among men, white men who don't have a college education. Whoever wins is going to have to try to put this country back together, and it's going to be quite a challenge, I think.
And that is the thing. I mean, Donald Trump has really talked about it being a movement, what he's had behind him. I don't think anybody could have predicted when we realised that he was actually going to be the nominee and go all the way to the election, that he would get such a groundswell. But with that groundswell has come, I can't think of any other way to put it, a lot of hate, a lot of people feeling very disenfranchised, angry with the way the system works, angry with politicians. So if Hillary Clinton does win this, where is all that hate going to go, Jane?
Well, you know, a few days ago, Republicans were talking about impeaching her before the FBI director said that there was nothing new in the emails that came out about her email server recently. She is going to have to be a Lincoln. You know, she's going to have to reach out, and then she's going to have people who were supporters of Bernie Sanders to her left who don't want her necessarily to go further towards the center or more towards the right. I think if she wins, it's going to be a tremendous challenge. If he wins, he's already talking about nominating people who are pretty divisive. Newt Gingrich, Rudy Giuliani, people who have not been known for not being, they have been known for being very critical of Hillary Clinton. So, you know, I think whoever wins is going to have to say, look, we need to work together. Our party system in this country has been really, in many ways, very polarized. Our Congress is polarized. Donald Trump emerged out of nowhere, rode a wave of anger from a lot of people who felt that the system economically is not working for them. What's regrettable is what you call the hate. He not only rode that wave, but he said the people to blame are immigrants, Mexicans, Syrian refugees. There are a lot of people. I mean, if women and immigrants and Hispanics go as decisively as people think they are going to go for Hillary Clinton, that will be a repudiation of the kind of language that he used. College students weren't really behind her because they were more behind Sanders. It looks like she will do well among them. Obviously, African-American vote. Barack Obama has been out there campaigning for her and saying, if you valued what I did, vote for her. That's been very important for her. But, you know, again, he could pull it out. I mean, it is possible that there are voters that we don't know about. But the early indications are that that she is ahead by a fairly substantial percentage point. It will take a lot for him to pull it out.
It would
really will.
It would take a very brave person, I think, at this point to place a bet either way, really. But tell us this, at least in your opinion, what will America look like under a President Trump?
Well, you know, one of the problems, Lisa, is we haven't had a lot of policy. He has said, if we take him at his word, that he plans to deport a lot of people in this country. He plans to build a wall. He plans to have extreme vetting of refugees. He doesn't believe in climate change. There's a lot, he says, because he's not bought by corporate interests. I mean, that is something that he and Bernie Sanders have had in common. He's invested something like $100 million, he says, in his campaign. We might get campaign finance reform. We're going to get tax cuts probably for the wealthy. And you're going to have people, Republicans in Congress, working with him, and he is not really a traditional Republican. He's got protectionist trade policies. I mean, he is all over the map in a very interesting way, but he does have some pretty extreme policies. If he wins, and if he does what he says, he's going to go against Obama's executive orders. He's going to try to appeal Obamacare. I mean, if he makes good on these promises, some of which he can do by executive order, I mean, that will be a radical shift in this country.
And don't forget that wall that's got to be built as well. Professor Jane Hall, always good to get your perspective. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Well, stay tuned throughout the morning. We'll be bringing the election result to you live with our special coverage.
Coming up this morning, who will be the next president? Well, let's cover that a bit more because our coverage to the US election continues as people continue to stream into polling booths to cast their vote. It's all ahead here on our special coverage as America decides.
Can't let me in your head, I'm not here to make you deal.
Sure is. Welcome back to the show. It's been a marathon election for both US presidential candidates, not to mention the rest of the world.
Now Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have made their final pleas to the nation. They've cast their votes and most of the votes are now in. But hasn't it been a wild ride? Let's take a look back.
On the same stage at Philadelphia's Independence Mall, the Obamas, the Clintons, and 33,000 people, all there for a symbolic passing of the torch. The president even paving the way by helping Hillary Clinton to the podium.
See, when it's that, it's going to be permanently there for you.
We face the test of our time.
The nation's first African-American president, hoping his successor breaks barriers too.
Then I'm asking you to work as hard as you can this one last day to elect, my fellow Americans, this fighter, this stateswoman, this mother, this grandmother, this patriot, our next president of the United States of America, Hillary Clinton.
We deserve a leader who sees our diversity not as a threat, but as a blessing.
Clinton flying back to New York, and when she landed, a group of friends and supporters right there to welcome her home.
Donald Trump already declaring victory.
I think we're going to blow him out tomorrow in a lot of different ways. Blow him out.
Trump's marathon campaign taking him to 5 battleground states in one day, finishing past midnight in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
We're hours away from a once-in-a-lifetime change. We're going to have real change.
But before that, a laser light show in New Hampshire and a surprise. Trump announcing 2 of the most popular people in New England are supporting him. Patriots coach Bill Belichick and quarterback Tom Brady.
So I said, so Tom, you voted for me, you support me. Am I allowed to say it tonight to this massive crowd in New Hampshire? He said, if you want to say it, you can say it, okay?
Trump reaching the height of presidential politics, anything but humbling, and making sure everyone remembers.
They say it's the single greatest movement, politically speaking, in the history of this country. Can you believe that? Can you believe it?
Trump telling his supporters his work is done. Now it's up to them.
Well, you know what you can do? Go out and vote tomorrow. That's what you can do, I'll tell you. That's the only way. That's where you beat the rigging, folks.
All right, well, not long now until the counting begins, and 9 senior correspondent Tom Steinford is in Times Square in New York. Tom, good evening to you over there. It's always a bit of a party time in Times Square where you are, but what's the mood like there tonight?
Look, the sun's gone down and things are starting to get a little bit crazy here. We've got a man here who is a big Hillary Clinton fan who's just been doing Vogue, Madonna's Vogue, to instead replace it with words about Hillary Clinton. Interesting little development. Beyond that, we've had a guy waving a Trump flag coming through in here, getting into an argument with him. And also a man up the back with a sign saying, this election doesn't matter, all that matters is redemption from Jesus. So look, a pretty colourful crowd getting around here at the moment. And what are we now? About 5 minutes away from voting closing in the first of the states here, and we'll start to get a bit of an indication of just who the next president will be. Here's our mate with his Jesus sign coming through here at the moment. Now look, when we talk about voting, I don't think there's been a more talked about moment in voting from today then Donald Trump. This photo is taking the internet by sensation. Have a look at him here. Just when he's voting, he casts his eye over to the left. There's Melania casting her vote. It's almost like he's double checking, just saying, just making sure you're voting for me. I've got my eyes on you, babe. So look, never put anything past the Donald when he's out and about on the campaign trail. But look, talking to people down here, a really strange atmosphere. I mean, this is always so lively down here, but you amplify it to the power of 10 today with such a historic occasion and potentially ramifications from this vote. And what you get from a lot of them is the sense that they actually hate both of the candidates that are on offer. And there was one woman who really, well, I think she summed it all up very nicely earlier on when we had a chat to her about how much she hates both candidates on offer. Have a listen.
I hate every single one of them. Next question.
Why is that?
They're both horrible human beings, and everybody knows it. You have one that's an absolute egomaniac. You have one that's a maniacal liar that is bred with corruption, and I am not happy about the person I voted for. I don't know anybody who is. Everybody that I know hates all of them and is disgusted by the fact that they have to pick between either of these two horrible human beings.
Do you think the rest of the world is laughing at America right now?
Oh, absolutely, and they have every right to be. Most definitely. Are you telling me we have 300 million people in the United States, and these two are the best we can come up with? We have seriously, the idea of anybody can be president, we have taken this way too far.
Come to Australia, we'll look after you.
Please, please, please. I have two, they'll come with.
Tom, thank you. Yeah, the United States today is anything but united. It is a deeply divided America as we go to air this morning, and whoever wins tonight or in the next few hours we'll have the job of bringing that country back together, Lisa.
We certainly do. Whatever you do, make sure you've got plenty of popcorn to get you through the day. It is time right now to head to New York, where Carl and Laurie Oakes are heading up Nine's US election coverage. Thanks for your company. We'll be back tomorrow with all the reaction as America decides.
See you then.
This is Nine's coverage of the US presidential election, live from New York City.
Hello everyone and welcome to the biggest show on the planet. It is good to have your company. This is the US presidential election and we are in for an extraordinary night, whatever happens. We'll bring you every moment to you from our election headquarters here in Times Square in New York City. This is the shot taken from just below our broadcast center and you can see this amazing city is absolutely buzzing. It is wonderful to be here. That's because both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are also right here in New York. They are just a stone's throw away, and very soon one of them will be elected president. It is 6 o'clock in the evening here. Polls are closing soon in several states. We're counting down, and shortly we'll be able to bring you the early results. With me in the studio to break it all down is the Nine Network's political editor, Laurie Oakes. Evening, Laurie.
Good day,
and Democrat strategist, Harlan Hill. Great to have you both with us.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, you pumped
night.
up?
Yes.
You must be all kinds of pumped up. You've got a special bow tie on and everything.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Well, it's not just us. Out in the field, our foreign correspondents are standing by. Rob Penfold at the Clinton camp, Laura Turner bunkered down with the Trump team, and Tom Steinford out there amongst the voters in Times Square. Lord knows what will happen to him tonight. It'll be interesting viewing. We'll also speak with some of the world's leading political minds, commentators and pollsters, and we'll join our colleagues, our partners in this election coverage, ABC America, for their expert analysis in crunching the numbers and calling results. They are broadcasting just across from us on the other side of Times Square. Right now, we have you covered on both sides of the globe, though. Peter Overton is standing by in Australia. Evening, Pete.
Hello to you, Carl. Thank you. We're in for something special, as you've said, over the next several hours as Americans elect their next president. I'll be joined throughout our coverage by the Nine Network's finance editor, Ross Greenwood, who's watching with great interest to see how the markets react to this election. Welcome, Ross.
No problem.
Good to see you. And, of course, Professor Joseph Siracusa, American political specialist from RMIT. Joe, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. And out in the field, we have Charles Croucher at the US Embassy function in Canberra and Lizzie Pearl in Sydney, where the US Consulate and Study Centre are gathering to watch the count. We'll also be joined by special guests, including former Foreign Minister Bob Carr and Australia's recently returned ambassador to the United States, Kim Beazley. Carl, we're looking forward to this coverage. We're holding our breath. Let's go back to you in New York.
Don't hold your breath for too long, Pete. It might be a long night. We'll see how it all goes. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, very soon one of them will emerge as the most powerful person in the free world. So how do they get there? Well, it's all about the Electoral College, and the magic number is 270. You win 270 Electoral College votes, you win the presidency. So what is an Electoral College vote? Stick with me here. You win Electoral College votes by winning individual states across America. There are 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, up for grabs tonight. When a candidate, Clinton or Trump, gets more than 50% of the vote in a state, they win that state and a batch of Electoral College votes along with it. Where it gets really interesting, I reckon, some states are worth more Electoral College votes than others. It's based basically on population. The state of Wyoming, for example, which has a relatively small population, is worth 3 Electoral College votes towards the magic number of 270. California is worth a whopping 55 votes. All the rest of the states fit somewhere in between the two, and we'll be keeping a close eye on every one of them as the count comes in. Okay, so for early predictions, not like there's any pressure as the polls close around for 6 states. Already polls closed in most of Kentucky and Indiana, so we'll have some results for you very soon. But early prediction-wise, Laurie Oakes, to you first of all. No pressure.
Look, the polls indicate it's going to be a Hillary Clinton victory. And to me, that's supported by the pessimism I've detected among the Republicans. And looking at Donald Trump today on television, he looked like a guy who's actually lost confidence. He was talking about if he loses, it'll be a waste of his time and his money and his energy. Well, you don't talk with that lack of confidence if you think you're going to win. You were telling me before as well that you have spoken to someone inside the Republican camp, and it was pretty negative energy. Yeah, look, the line I got was that there's no path to the White House for us this year, the Republicans, unless after they take possession again, the Clintons invite Mr. and Mrs. Trump to lunch. And that indicates a fair amount of pessimism among the Republicans. I wonder if that'll happen. It'll be a great lunch. A lunch will fly on the wall. I still feel sorry for that baby. Harlan, you think that there's still some chance of Donald Trump? Where does it come?
I do. Well, I'm going to add to your point on the GOP being sort of pessimistic. Last night they got a poll in, an internal poll, and they're not talking about this publicly, but it showed that she was going to come across with 300 electoral votes tonight. And so I think based on all the internal polling, both in the Trump campaign and out of the GOP, it's clear that she is the favored. But having looked at the early vote totals, looked at all the data, I still see a path for him. She is underperforming Barack Obama from 2012. He's overperforming Mitt Romney from 2012. There's still a path here. I mean, we're going to know within the next couple of hours whether he can pull it off or not.
Harlan, the Latino turnout was massive, record numbers. Gee, what a force they are now. If it's that good and if it's that much in her favour, she wins by more than 300 convincingly, doesn't she?
Well, I think it's really important to specify where the Latino vote's coming. Yeah. It's coming in the all-important state of Florida. Last go around, Barack Obama won Florida by an average of 13 votes per precinct. So it was really tight last go around, and I think it will be tight this time. And if she's able to actually turn out Latino voters the way that it sounds like she was during early voting and continuing into tonight, she'll lock it up pretty early. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah, he can't win without Florida, can he?
No. I mean, if he loses Florida, this changes the calculus dramatically.
The last two elections, Australian time, have been decided somewhere between 2 and 3 in the afternoon, so we're talking about 4 hours away. Does that fit in with the timing, Florida?
I think so. I mean, look, coming up at 7 o'clock, we're going to know, or we're going to start to hear from Virginia and Georgia. These are two key states. I think that he's going to lose Virginia. He should win Georgia. If he doesn't win Georgia, I mean, I don't know. But in the polls were very tight there. And that's largely due to African-American voters overwhelmingly supporting her. But did they get to the polls today? We'll know soon.
Okay, Laurie?
Well, I agree with that. What I'm wondering about is how Donald Trump will accept it if he loses. He's a winner. He kept promising a big win. And what will his followers think when he loses? Will they accept it? Will he accept it? Hillary Clinton clearly hopes so. She says that she will talk to him when she's elected, if she's elected, in the hope that he'll be constructive about the transfer of power and make his followers accept it. But I don't know. I don't see Donald Trump as necessarily doing that.
Well, conciliatory or combative was the big question. What's he going to be? He's only shown one way so far.
He looks pretty combative to me.
He does. All right, and that won't be good for anyone. But let's wait and see what happens. It will be historic, of course, if Hillary Clinton wins the White House, the first female president of the United States. It'll mean a huge amount.
It's a historic night. We've had 44 presidents of the United States, and they've all been men. And she would be the 45th. And, and coming on the heels of the first African-American president, it'd be an amazing period of American history, regardless of what your politics are.
All right, we are in Times Square. It's a beautiful shot of Times Square this evening. It's been quite a balmy day here in New York. Beautiful day, which also meant that there was a significant turnout. A lot of people out voting, record numbers in many parts. So we'll be down there amongst Times Square with Tom Steinfort very soon. But right now the Democrats are gathering here in Manhattan. Rob Penfold is there for us this evening. G'day, Rob.
Hey, Carl. Look, it's
How's
here
it
we're at the
going there,
Javits Centre here, and it's really quite good. We're at the Javits Centre here, just probably about 2 kilometres from you down the road, and the crowds are starting to turn up now. The people have been lined up around the street here since 7 o'clock this morning trying to get in, and there's going to be a lot of people who won't get in. But then again, we're hearing that there's going to be some sort of event going on outside as well, because they are really preparing here for a celebration in a big way. And the Javits Centre is quite an amazing place too. We've been speaking about it through the morning, but it's a completely glass building, and there have been, of course, so much spoken about the fact that one day a woman would crack that glass ceiling and become the President of the United States. Well, this is the glass building, and tonight Hillary Clinton's going to be here. And as I say, I'm looking, there's a lot of smiling faces around here at the moment, very relaxed indeed, no tension whatsoever. And I think that the people are very quietly confident that eventually the streamers and the balloons and perhaps even the fireworks will be going off here in a few hours' time.
Well, she had a lot of celebrities, didn't she, I think, working on her side during all of this. Who's to say whether or not that has a huge impact, but she has certainly campaigned very strongly at 69 years of age, has so much stamina. They won't be popping the corks just yet, though, will they?
No, not just yet. I think that they've got to be very careful about this, although news is filtering through, probably not a great surprise, but we're hearing that George W. Bush and Laura, former president, of course, went to vote today, and the word is being widely reported now that he actually left the presidential box empty. He ticked all the other boxes for the Republican people on the form as well, but left that one empty. And so many other Republicans are also doing it as well as a protest vote, that they just don't think Donald Trump is the right man to represent them. And as Harlan mentioned there, and Laurie as well, we've got two of the most really the most almost despised candidates that have ever run here, but at the same time I don't think that's going to change the mood here later on this evening if, as so many people are predicting, that Hillary Clinton comes here and claims victory.
Rob, we've got two candidates from New York, but Donald Trump's a native New Yorker, yet they booed him at the polling booth. Is he that unpopular in his hometown?
Yeah, around here, people, I think they're taken by the Donald in many ways. He's one of those sorts of characters that's a larger-than-life character, and I think they liked him as he was, as a real estate developer and as a host of a TV show, and you're a fired man and all that. But when I think that he stepped up to the mark, and as you know, Laurie surprisingly actually won the nomination. I don't know of anybody who actually predicted that was going to happen. I move around in circles with a lot of journalists and a lot of political journalists as well. It was a real shock for everybody as he went one by one and just knocked out all the opposition. But here in New York, yeah, he was a popular guy. People loved him at events and things because he's a great character. I met him back in 2006. We went and met him down there at his office when he was hosting the Apprentice show at that stage, and we were invited up to his office. And yeah, a great character, telling us all about the Donald Trump that you've seen on television is very much the Donald Trump that we met. Big ego, opinion about everything. Was telling us about he didn't have enough walls space in his office there to hang up all the awards and all the love notes and all the photos that people would send of him about him.
Well, he's going to have a very big wall if he wins.
That's right, he would indeed. But yeah, they like him here, yes, but I don't think as the presidential candidate, and certainly, well, it's not surprising here in New York, the Republicans will no chance of winning here at all. But at the same time, it's they want him back as the Donald, but not as the Donald the president, I would say.
Hey, Harlan Hill here. So I can actually back that up. I mean, I voted before coming in here, and I've never seen turnout like this. It blew me away. That's kind of when I took a step back and I thought, maybe I'm not reading this right because I'm living in the New York media bubble. To see so many people out to the polls, both Donald Trump supporters and Hillary Clinton people wearing their buttons and their hats, the enthusiasm and really the pessimism was overwhelming, depending on who you asked. And it was a remarkable moment. It actually gives me hope for American democracy to see so many people actually out participating.
New York's a Democrat town, though. I mean, he don't even really pick up Staten Island.
Oh, yeah, he's not going to. I mean, he's going to get clobbered here.
Yeah.
But that's no surprise, and it's still okay. I mean, my real point, though, is that I'm not surprised that he got booted his own precinct. Yeah.
All right, plenty more analysis coming up, and we'll be back to Rob Penfold through the course of the night. Looks like, given some of those poll numbers, that Hillary might be in for a terrific night. Stay with us. We're live to Washington, D.C. next in the race for the White House. This is the U.S. presidential election. You won't miss a thing. Live on 9. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to Times Square in New York City. You are watching the US presidential election. Thousands of people, both locals and internationally, are gathering here to watch the election results. Polls will close soon in several states, and we'll bring you projected results. When they do, you will see the latest tally on our non-stop counter at the bottom of your screen. Of course, you can also send us thoughts on social media. We'd like to hear from you as well. Countdown, 42 minutes until those polls close. We'll start to see some results pretty soon after that. Laura Turner is joining us now from Trump headquarters. Laura, good evening to you, New York time. How's it all going?
Good evening to you, Carl. Well, I am right inside Trump HQ right now. We're up on the riser now, and it is really starting to feel like a Republican event now. They've got Fox News on the big screens, and many of Trump's invitees have started arriving right in front of the stage there behind me, and that is, of course, where we will see Donald Trump in, well, a few hours' time, maybe, or maybe much later tonight. And, well, we wait to see whether it's him conceding defeat or him taking home the presidency of the United States.
He looked a little bit worried this morning, a little bit concerned. Can you assess his mood, given you've been across what he's been doing for the last couple of weeks and months?
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I certainly thought the same thing, and it probably didn't help his mood when he arrived to place his vote this morning, when he was booed quite heavily in Manhattan. And that's probably very indicative of the mood here in New York City. Donald Trump is very popular in upstate New York, in the state here, in the rural areas of a lot of states across America, but in these big cities, and his home city, you know, he lives in Trump Tower, just around from where he placed his vote this morning, he's not that popular, and that is what the police were telling me when I spoke to them outside Trump Tower last night, that a lot of people in this city are very liberal and they don't particularly like Donald Trump, the candidate, so much. So certainly that would have been weighing on his mind, that he's not too welcome in terms of politics in his own city. And you're right, he did look a little worried this morning. And certainly made waves by looking over his wife's shoulder as she placed her vote, always making controversies, Donald Trump, but still he did the showman thing and came out saying that that he is confident that he'll get across the line, and he's always said that, and I think he always will. We know he's been saying for a long time that the polls are rigged, and you know, he certainly deserves to win, so we may never hear him say that he actually lost this election.
Laura, we read that Hillary Clinton's people are writing 2 speeches for her tonight, one if she wins, one if she loses. Have you heard whether the Donald's people are writing a losing speech for him? It doesn't seem in his nature, but are they preparing?
Yeah, Laurie, that is something that we certainly have not heard, and from every Republican insider, everyone from inside his campaign that we've listened to, especially over the past couple of weeks and the last couple of days, that is something that they just will not entertain. Even being asked today, you know, will he concede defeat, they immediately pivot to say, well, that's just not going to happen. We believe that will not happen. He will not need to say those words. Donald Trump is going to win, and they are
they can't,
forthright
they can't believe
in making
the voters will say you're fired.
So. That's right. I mean, I saw a New York Times headline just yesterday, and across the front of it emblazoned, it said "loser." Now that is exactly those 2 words, "you're fired" and "loser." They are the headlines that we know that so many publications want to get out there in the next couple of days. But that's right. It certainly could be the case that they just cannot accept headlines like that.
Laura, you'd be aware of the mood inside where you are right now. You'd be aware that, and they'd be aware of the big voter turnouts, the big Latino voting turnout, and that doesn't bode well for them. What is their mood like? What are they saying to each other?
Yeah, look, I think it is a little subdued. I mean, I was at the Republican convention back in July in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was all systems go. It was partying, you know, every day on that convention floor. There was so much hype, and all of his rallies have been the same. And it is early days here. They're still setting up, and his guests have only just started arriving. But from my perspective, it does feel a little subdued, and I think that is because when you look at everything that's already being said, that Hillary now sort of has that momentum and it feels like she's going to win. So these are people, as we just said, who have long said he's going to win. So well, you've got to think that they might be starting to put their tail between their legs a little if things do go the way that people are expecting them to.
I tell you what, it's going to be an interesting predicament for the Republican Party if it turns out that he does better than expected. Whether or not they have to change focus, I'll bring Harlan in on that. Laura, we'll talk to you very soon. Take care out there at Trump headquarters tonight. We'll see you soon. So given that, if he's close, it's a big predicament for the Republican Party, isn't it, in terms of what direction they take after that, given that a number of his own party didn't vote for him?
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, if he has big turnout, it looks like we're going to have the highest turnout in a presidential election in history, which is pretty remarkable. The last record was set in 2008. Looks like we're going to have 140 million Americans come out and vote. And if it's close, that means that he has turned out more Republican voters to support him than any other Republican candidate in history. They can't turn their back on Donald Trump 100%. They can turn their back on his personality, but not his trade policy and those types of things. All right,
well, there's also an ABC exit poll. We're just getting the results of this, ABC America, of course, and it is, well, as the New York Post said today in its headline, vote for the one you dislike the least, and it seems like that is ringing true at the ballot box. 54% view Hillary Clinton unfavourably. 61% view Donald Trump unfavourably. Yeah. It's about right, isn't it?
It's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, race to the bottom, right. Yeah. 59% say Hillary Clinton is not honest and trustworthy. 65% say Trump is not honest and trustworthy. 51% say Trump's treatment of women bothers them a lot. I would have thought it was higher than that. 44% say the same about Clinton's emails. So
there's another reason it's a historic election. Yeah. These two are the two candidates with the highest negative ratings of any two major party nominees since polls began.
Well, I've never seen so much negativity, and I've done a number of elections here as well. And just to talk to people in bars, on the street, on public transport, who say, I don't even want to vote for anyone. I'm embarrassed by both. So how does that, whoever wins this, how does that manifest itself in the way this country is led from tomorrow onwards?
Well, unfortunately, if Hillary Clinton wins, she's gotten away with the email scandal, but she hasn't been cleared on the investigation of the Clinton Foundation. That investigation continues. And so she may become the president of the United States while being the subject of an FBI investigation. And so, I think that there will be charges that are brought up by Congress. The atmosphere is going to be nasty. It's going to be dramatic here in the United States. And whoever wins is going to have a lot of work ahead of them to reconcile these two parties. And I don't know if they can do it. I don't know if it's possible.
She won't get a honeymoon. The honeymoon will be a slew of hearings and investigations.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, that doesn't bode well.
And what's so amazing about this is typically when you have a really negative election, people stay home. It's a tacit form of voter suppression. When there's a lot of negativity, people stay home.
Yeah.
And so once again, this election cycle continues to defy all logic and everything we know about how elections work because we're having record turnout.
Okay, and that's why it's important to watch and keep watching during the course of the day. Thank you for that, Harlan. Stay with us. This is the US presidential election live on 9. Anything could happen next. Welcome back to Times Square in New York City, the bright lights of Times Square as the people of the United States elect a new president. Right now, the electoral vote count sits at 0 in the race for 270, and that will change obviously soon. Remember, 270 electoral college votes is what it takes to win the White House. Well, we all know the entire world is watching as well. Peter Overton is no exception. Who are you tipping tonight, Pete?
Well, I think I'll just sit on the fence at the moment, but I think Hillary Clinton, to be honest, is the one with the momentum, Carl. I think that's what the feeling we're getting from here. But you know, you never know, do you? It's just been so fascinating to observe the election over the last months and to these, 69 and 70 years old, and they're going so hard, and they must be exhausted, but they're running just on adrenaline, aren't they?
They are. They've been quite amazing. And look, as a father who has a daughter, I think my daughter came home, I was saying last night, a couple of months ago, and said, Daddy, I just don't like that Donald Trump and the wall he wants to build. But they all think of all that. Now let's head out to Tommy Steinfort now. I think he is in Times Square for us with all those bright lights and lots of people around. Tommy, good evening to you.
Hey, Carlos. Yeah, it's a crazy place at the best of times out here at Times Square, but tonight there's a real extra sort of buzz and a sense from everyone here that this is such an important, such a historic night in the United States. Of course, they're either going to get their first ever female president or a man the likes of which they've never seen before in the Oval Office. Come for a bit of a walk with us here. You can see this is jam-packed here. We've even got a Hillary Clinton fan over here that's just taken it upon himself to start yelling at the crowd here, preaching in favour of Hillary Clinton. Interesting crowd going on down here. There you go, bit of that. Come back down this way and you can have a look at just how busy it is, ram-packed here. We've been talking to a lot of the voters that have been down here throughout the day, and look, the common sentiment you get, particularly here in New York, is that I don't like either of the candidates that are on offer. And the New York Post had that great front page saying, vote for whoever you dislike least. And that's what you get a lot of the vibe off from people out here today. One woman even asked us if she could take political asylum in Australia. She thought the situation here was that dire. And look, touching on Australia, we actually ran into a couple of Australians here just before. We've got Tom and Sue, who are here from Adelaide. How crazy is it? Paint a picture for everyone back home.
This is just absolutely crazy. There's blokes walking around in their underpants with Trump written on the bottom. We've got naked-breasted women down there with Trump and Hillary's name on it, and the police presence just down the road too. They've all got their weapons out, so it's just unbelievable. You just got to be here.
Does this remind you of a South Australian election?
Definitely not. Ours is very, very low-key compared to theirs. Everybody is talking about it, and people are worried about who's going to win, and it's just crazy. It's all, it's on everybody's minds, and I think that they're a bit worried about who might win the election. So a tour guide lady told us yesterday. She said that she's keeping her fingers crossed. So, it's interesting, to say the least.
Great, well, thank you for that. I know you're off to see The Lion King tonight, so I won't hold you up for your show, but you're missing the best show on earth, the people watching out here tonight. Keep coming back to us here because it's all happening in Times Square this evening. We're getting all sorts of people coming through and a lot of people getting very excited now as we start to head towards that time. We'll get a bit of an indication of who the next person in the White House will be.
So many Australians are in town now. We've seen them all week here, Tommy. A lot of them were in the New York Marathon. They're hobbling around everywhere at the moment. They've got plenty to say. And also, plenty of Aussies actually work in New York, and they've been hanging on this decision pretty much as well. Obviously, there are some concerns about the economy here, and they want things to go as well as they possibly can. And interesting, too, that fact the other day when Hillary Clinton was cleared by the FBI, the markets went up, Harlan?
Absolutely. I mean, they fully recovered. I mean, they were down 350 points, at least here in the States, and recovered by the time we hit Election Day. So clearly the markets favor Hillary Clinton. There's no question about that.
You know, just to go back to Times Square now, because I do believe we have some vision here that I'm not going to look at. And Laurie, you can probably tell me what it is, but I think it's some sort of... well, can we see it?
I can only see you. That's bad enough.
How bad's that? Anyway, I don't know what it is. Nick. The naked protesters, or the naked voters. There we are. So this is causing a bit of mayhem. Look, Tom Steifert's on his way there, and look, he might be able to shed some light on all of that.
There's the Trump.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got someone in front of that monitoring the situation.
Yeah, that's what the tourists were talking about.
It has been an eventful election campaign, Laurie, right?
Yeah, and you can see why they're there rather than in the Broadway theatres. And it's interesting that they've closed down a lot of the shows tonight because there's so much interest in the election. It's been a fascinating election, and unlike any that I've seen before. I was looking at a column I wrote during the 2012 American election, where I talked about how civil the language was. The second debate between Obama and Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney thanked Obama for taking part. Obama said Mitt Romney was a good guy. They wanted the viewers to think that their opponent wasn't telling the truth, but the word lie was not mentioned once. And I said that it's a pity Australian politicians weren't that civil. Well, I'll tell you what, you wouldn't say that now.
No. Well, you went out on a limb there, Laurie. I remember that because I keep all of your articles.
Of course.
And you said that the Australians could learn a lot from the American politics. What could we take from this campaign, do you think?
Well, I think we can take from this campaign that they're better at the aggro than we'll ever be. I mean, I can't imagine any Australian political leader referring in every meeting to the opponent as crooked Hillary. I remember Andrew Peacock called Bob Hawke a little crook once, and there was hell to pay in the Parliament. But in America, anything goes these days.
Go on.
And they wouldn't even shake each other's hands in the debates. I've never seen that. I think that was unprecedented in American debate history.
It was.
That's how hostile it is.
It's an extraordinary change in 4 years.
Was.
And I guess it's all down to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
A different kind of candidate.
Absolutely.
Rough edges and no diplomatic skills or desires at all.
Okay, guys, we're just going to take a short break from the election. I'll come back to it in just a second, but we have some breaking news out of California. Now, we understand that there has been a shooting at a polling station in California. At least 4 people at least 4 shots were fired, is what I can glean now from the information coming through to me. At least 4 people shot. This polling station is about 35 miles outside of Los Angeles, is what we're being told. Eyewitnesses report of a massive shooting. People have been told to stay away from the area or stay indoors, and around 20 children also evacuated from a gym nearby. As you can see there, helicopters coming in and out. I've seen a number of people on the streets, a number of emergency vehicles rushing in and out of that scene. At least 2 victims were flown to nearby hospitals. But that's terrible news at a polling station. At least 4 people have been shot. We're still awaiting on what injuries they have sustained. And as soon as we do get any more information on that terrible news out of California, about that shooting, we'll bring it to you when it happens. But look, given the various debates on gun debate as well, Harlan, it'll bring it all home, won't it?
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, well, it remains to be seen. I mean, we had some. There was some discussion of there was some discussion of Al Qaeda. Apparently, they were threatening to strike yesterday, and there were lots of rumors all last week about heightened terror alerts. And I'm seeing here that the LA County Registrar is saying that 2 polling places were actually impacted by this. So. Right. It's a horrible thing, and I'm just, there are actually economic and political impacts when you have these types of major events. It keeps people from shopping. It keeps people from actually going out and casting their ballot. So this is a horrible end to the election season.
These are live pictures here. It's some pretty awful stuff that's going on there, and you know, when you've got 20 children nearby in a gym, you know, it's a pretty awful situation for emergency services to have to deal with. I mean, the horrible thing about any of these incidents in the United States is that they're terribly used to it, aren't they? The police in moving in and how they deal with it. But as we know, and as moving in and how they deal with it. But as we know, and as we go to air right now, 4 people we understand have been shot. 2 people. 4 people have been shot and they're on the way to hospitals. They've been evacuated by helicopters, and emergency services are surrounding that area and moving from the polling station and fanning out into
But no indication yet of the motivation?
No, none yet, yeah. It's a big problem here, isn't it, in the United States? Could be anything. We'll bring you more information on that as soon as we possibly can, and we'll have much more of the election as we zero in on the closing of the polling. You're watching the US election, the race for the president. We'll be back with more right after this. Well, the polls and the booths are just about closed now, and pretty soon we'll get some of the early results from some of those voting stations. But right now, let's check in with Peter Overton back home. Hey, Pete.
Good on you, Carl. Thank you, sir. Look, the global markets are one of the big gauges of this US election, and certainly with a Trump vote, a Trump presidency, there's been a lot of turmoil about the markets, indeed, if he gets into the White House. 370 economists were so worried about a Trump presidency that they actually signed a letter condemning the Republican presidential candidate. The Nine Network's finance editor is Ross Greenwood, of course. He's with me on the panel today. Ross, how are the markets responding so far this morning? They've been open for, what, 40 minutes here in Australia? Yep. And, of course, how are they looking in the US?
And the interesting thing is the United States markets are now closed, and so as a result, the litmus test is now the Asian markets, of which Australia is the very first of those to open. Now, the Australian market has taken on the lead from Wall Street overnight because since Hillary Clinton basically was cleared of that investigation by the FBI into the use or the inappropriate use of an email server only 2 days ago, the markets have taken off. So on one particular night, the Dow Jones index was up more than 300 points. It was up around about 70 points last night. The Australian stock market this morning up more than 40 points. But more important than that is the Australian companies that actually have US exposure. So there's 2 key companies here that I've been watching. One is Cochlear, which makes the ear implants, which is a big seller in the United States, one of the biggest in the world. Its share is sharply higher today. And on top of that, also the blood products company, the old Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, CSL. It's a very big player in the United States. Its shares also up sharply today. So these are sort of, if you like, small litmus tests that the market believes that Hillary Clinton will gain power. Gold prices have fallen, and certainly if Donald Trump were seen to be even considered to be a victor tonight, gold prices would take off, share prices would fall. So what we can see right now is that's the scenario that's playing out inside the markets that are tipping a Hillary Clinton victory.
A former chief economist at the IMF said a Trump victory would likely cause the stock market to crash and plunge the world into recession. I mean, that's pretty heavy language, isn't it?
It is pretty heavy language. And the reason for that is because many of the economic policies of Donald Trump, you know, putting up a wall with Mexico, putting up, if you like, virtual walls for trade around the world, they're not only untried, but they're so incredibly radical. For a free trade democracy such as the United States, to start building barriers around itself would really send a signal to the rest of the world. That's the reason why people were so worried about a Trump victory with these radical policies, notwithstanding the fact that he said that he would bring tax rates down, corporate tax rates down to 15% to try and make America competitive again. And that would have then led off in almost a tit-for-tat sort of exchange around the world. We would have seen even the impact here in Australia. As I say, for the moment, they think that Hillary Clinton is genuinely that safe pair of hands.
That's what the market's telling us.
That's what they're saying.
Roscoe, thank you. Professor Joseph Siracusa from RMIT is with us as well. He appears on Weekend Today every weekend with great insights into all sorts of subjects going on. But Joseph, the thing that I hear all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, is there's 300 million plus people in America. Why do you end up with 2 people who are so negative, if you like, in terms of their perception with the American people?
That's a very good question, and it goes back to who these people are. Why do you want to be president of the United States? It only pays $400,000. We've had 44 of them. 8 of them have died in office. 4 have been murdered, and 10 have been shot at. I mean, it's like working for the mob in many respects. So what it tends to do is it tends to attract very alpha men and now alpha women, and Hillary is an alpha. And I think you have to go back to their childhood. You know, the poets say that you live your life until you're 12, and then you relive your life over. Trump grew up in a household where he couldn't do enough for his father, who was cold and indifferent. Hillary, well, she was not a daddy's girl. she found her father cold and indifferent, and she tried to emulate her mother's aspirations. Her mother was not a great achiever, but so Hillary was always doing things to for her mother's. She kind of like living her mother's life, the life she didn't have. And we got all kinds of variables here. 126 million Americans voted last year. 146 million are registered this year. We don't know how those 20 million people are going to vote. We don't know if the millennials are going to come out. You know, they stuck with Bernie Sanders. They didn't like Hillary very much. We don't know if the black vote's going to come out. They seem pretty indifferent. And so, you know, as I grew up with Dallas, I mean, JR used to say, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. So while Hillary is a superior candidate, and she looks like a likely winner, and everybody here has probably been on the Melbourne Cup over the years. We all know what happens to the favorite sometimes. It isn't over till it's over.
Look, President Obama, he really got out and supported. They were arch rivals, weren't they, of course, when they were going for the nomination. But he came out and he was campaigning, say, quote, I know there are a lot of people in barbershops and beauty salons. It was exciting having Barack and Michelle in the White House. We love them, but now it's not as, they're not as excited as much. So that he was pleading with the African Americans to get out there and basically continue the business that he says he's done. Vote for Hillary. Will they listen? That's the key, or one of the keys.
They might say they're going to listen, but she'll never attract that kind of mob now. Maybe the Hispanics will make up for it. Maybe Donald Trump has the silent majority ready to support him. But I doubt that Hillary can count on all the component parts of Barack Obama's victory. She's in charge of a new Democratic Party. We got Hispanics and blacks who live in the suburbs now. That used to be Republican territory. We got the millennials who are drifting more and more into the Democratic Party. We have a lot of the white collar or the blue collar Democrats are drifting back to the Republican Party, the way Ronald Reagan grabbed them, and before him, I might add, Richard Nixon. Everyone says this is a terrible election. This is fearful. My God, when Richard Nixon was running for the presidency, they had murdered Martin Luther King. A couple weeks later, they murdered Bob Kennedy, and American cities were burning. I would think about 20 of them were burning all at once. I mean, we were in the middle of a crisis. I mean, this campaign, while it's dirty and underhanded and all the rest, it's not as fearful as the 1960s. So in that sense, we have to get a little bit of perspective here.
Although at the same time, it is tempered today by this news out of Los Angeles that 4 people have been shot and police are hunting a heavily armed man.
Oh, yes, that would be tempered indeed, yes.
Yeah, indeed. OK, Ross, Joe, thank you very much. We'll come back to you throughout the day. The Nine Network's Charles Croucher is watching proceedings from the Press Club in Canberra. Charles, looking a bit bare there at the moment, but a big crowd is expected nonetheless.
The first few people starting to pile in, Pete. Morning to you. It is an excited crowd here. It's the diplomatic corps. They come here to the Press Club to watch what will unfold. Of course, the result here will have a huge bearing on not just the diplomatic corps in Australia, but right around the world. Up on the hill at Parliament House, the excitement is more a case of nerves. Bill Shorten's already said that a win for Hillary will be good for Australia's interests. Nick Xenophon said he's got his mate Bruno with a bobcat on call just in case things go badly. He wants to dig a big trench, in his words, to bury himself in at mates' rates. But here at the Press Club, they're ready to celebrate. We've got the bunting around. It's not quite the Democratic convention or the Republican convention with the Grand Old Party there. There's a balloon drop here in Canberra, though, so they're looking forward to that. And then, of course, Pete, this is being run by the US Embassy, and anything involving the US Embassy has a hell of a spread as well. So looking forward to the lunch that's coming on here. So bunting, balloon drops, and a buffet. Perfect time in Canberra.
Charles, it looks like the buffet's all yours at the moment. I hope a few more friends turn up, my friend. Well done. Let's go back to Carl now in New York.
Wouldn't mind being where Charles Croucher is. Let me tell you, Pete. Yeah, listen, we've just got some more details filtering through. We'll come back to the election in just a second, but of this shooting, which happened at Azusa in California. For those who are familiar with California, this happened about 35 kilometres northeast of downtown, just around the 210 north of the U10. You can see heavily armed police there because the situation, we understand, is still active. At least one suspect has been trapped and is surrounded now by SWAT teams. 4 people have been injured in this shooting. It happened at a house, not necessarily at a polling station. It happened near the polling booths in Los Angeles. Changes the situation just a little bit, but it doesn't change the danger levels for the people around there. Obviously, there's been some kind of collision there. There's one house that is currently being surrounded as well as we go to air right now, but it certainly affected the surrounding areas, including a gym where 20 children had to be evacuated from that gym. At least 2 victims were flown to hospital, 2 victims flown to hospital, and again is a reminder of just how dangerous some suburbs around America can be. And we'll bring you more details on that shooting in California as soon as more details come to hand. We'll be back with more of the US presidential election as well, coming up right after these short messages. Stay with us.
Idiot bike riders using our road.